Okay. Steph, are you looking at YouTube?
Uh,
We should be streaming now to Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and
let
all of them.
me-
I think I got that fixed.
I'm on your. Yes, I see it on YouTube.
Okay, that's good. And
I
Facebook.
think I. And let me refresh Facebook. Any Facebookers can confirm we're still alive. I think we are. Let's see. Let me check
Okay.
Twitter. 1 second.
Okay. We are, I believe we are streaming.
Yes, we are on Twitter. We are streaming.
Okay,
Yes.
we're here. then,
Woohoo!
then let's officially launch this. We're a minute late. I'm sorry. Um, let's one more second here while we get the. Okay, let's get the intro.
I need ribs to ease my day. I need to find time to cook them right. My papa said, can't hurry ribs. No, you just have to wait. He said, ribs.
And now, at your service, here to help you cook and eat like royalty is the barbecue whisperer and hedonism evangelist from AmazingRibs.com, the planet's biggest and baddest barbecue and grilling website, Meathead.
Boiled slabs must I stand before I find the crunch to let me live again. Right now,
Wow. Okay. We had a little technical difficulty that got us off to a little bit of a late start. But we are up and live. I see we are live now on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we're going to have a special event. We have with us Chef Stef. Chef Stef is, you're out in the San Diego area, aren't you?
Yes. I am, but I'm originally from one of the barbecue capitals of the world, St. Louis, Missouri.
Aha. And also the home of the weirdest pizza in the world.
Oh, come on. Those are fighting words.
Chef Stef is one of the great experts in sous vide and griddling and a variety of other things. And I'm very pleased and proud to say that she's now writing for us. We have 2 or 3 of her articles already up and running. You'll find them on our homepage. And she's going to be focusing on sous vide and griddling and whatever else tickles her fancy. She can cook just about anything. And we thought we would kind of focus tonight a little bit on sous vide Q, we call it, because there we go, sous vide Q. Thank you. It's a moniker we gave to the concept that if you know anything about sous vide, and Chef Stef is going to give us a little bit of an intro as to the basic core concepts, but sous vide is a marvelous concept and a marvelous technique, and it needs a little help, especially towards the end. And grilling or smoking is a really great way to solve things. Chef, why don't you tell us? Because there's a highlight. I see Darren Wilson is here, who is also one of the great sous vide Q experts. You know Darren, I'm sure, and he's in the audience. Give the audience, in case that there's somebody out there who's heard of sous vide but has never done it, doesn't quite know for sure how it works. Give us a quick summary of what sous vide Q is.
Okay, so we'll start with the first 2 syllables, the sous vide. So, you know, it's literally French translation for under a vacuum. So no, I'm going to tell you right now, we're not vacuuming our food. But it's think of a big tub of precision temperature water that you can control so that like it literally can't go over or under a certain amount. And this is a very gentle pressurized cooking. It is done in a safe way in a BPA free bag, whether it's a Ziploc submersion method or whether you food save it, but it is done with water circulation. Think of a giant thermometer. Let's say you like your steak at 134 degrees, a perfect medium rare. You would fill this tub up with your water. You would put the giant thermometer in. You can use Tupperware, you can use a pot, you can use a special sous vide thing. And you would say, this is the internal temperature that I am targeting for because this is where I like my food. Now, the great thing about sous vide is you don't have to be a fancy chef to be able to get this result. I mean, that is why it's so amazing. And it used to be just the fanciest of the restaurants had these big machines, and they've made it so much more approachable for the home cook. Now, like Meathead said, of course, there is, some 101 to it, and there's some finishing techniques that we'll talk a little bit more. But what I love about sous vide is it can make a person, and I'm going to call him out. My husband, he would never eat a chicken breast when I first met him. And once he said, okay, you can get a sous vide, fine, another thing in the house. Now he actually requests chicken breast. So that is sous vide in a nutshell.
So the idea is I like to use the example of trying to catch a bus or a train. When you're grilling or you're cooking in an oven, the temperature is much higher than what your target temperature for meat is. As she says, say you're shooting for 130 to 135, which is your classic medium rare steak. You set the water bath for that temperature, and it's like stopping the bus, stopping the train. You can get on at exactly that temperature. The meat stays at that temperature, never goes beyond. When you're just throwing it in the oven or on the grill, it's like trying to jump onto a moving a train, because your oven or your grill is 400, 450. And so you only have this little tiny window at which your meat is perfectly cooked. But
Right.
with sous vide, it's always perfectly cooked. Well, it takes, maybe a half hour, an hour, depending on the thickness, for it to get to that temperature. And the other cool thing is you can leave it at that temperature for hours. So say you got a whole
Days.
bunch of people coming over, and you want to do, 20 filet mignons perfectly. And you just don't have room for that many on your grill, and you're trying to juggle and temp each of them with a thermometer and get them all. You set the temperature for 134, put them in these Ziploc bags or vacuum bags, and they just hit that temperature and they stay there, and they never go beyond. And then when people show up and it's time to sit down for dinner, your meat's perfectly cooked on the inside. But take it from here, Chef Stef.
Well, there's a couple things, right? So you could actually smoke it if you wanted to impart some smoke flavor in it. The beauty is, so normally what we tell people is if you're going to do it in a broiler or you're going to throw it right on the grill, to dry it. That's a very important step because that's what really catches the sear. But the loophole here, I should probably toss it back to you, but the loophole here is if you're going to smoke it, you want that meat wet so that the smoke grabs onto that moisture. So I'm going to throw one more loophole in here because we talked about 20 filet mignons. Another really great thing that I love about sous vide, especially if I'm going to have a dinner party, is, and I do this actually a lot with chicken because you really want to be careful throwing chicken straight on a hot grill right after you sous vide it. But the great thing you can also do is you can chill it down. So once you've sous vide something, you could sous vide something like 2 nights before, and then you can you keep it in the bag. So you throw it in an ice bath, you chill it down. It's already cooked, so you don't need to worry about anything crazy happening with food poisoning or that type of thing. Right in your fridge, and then the day that your party happens, happens when on your grill, and it's a lot harder to overcook a cooled piece of chicken breast than it is a piece of chicken breast that just came out at 150 degrees.
I see Richard Jensen is here, and I remember meeting him like several years ago at uh, the International Sous Vide Association conference. And let's see if I can do a screen share. Stand by. There it is. Can you see Chef Stef? Can you see the green picture on the screen?
I can, yep.
Okay. That's the cover of um, a ebook that I did. And by the way, I did do an ebook on sous vide made easy. It's available on all of the ebook services, Kindle and Apple's iBook and Nook and so on. But that picture is from that conference. Gosh, you remember? You were there, weren't you, Chef?
You asked me if I was there?
Were you there? And where the heck were we, in Virginia?
No, I was there virtually.
Oh, okay. It was 105 degrees or something. I'm sitting there. I got 3 charcoal chimneys, and we had sous vide'd some marvelous Allen Brothers USDA prime steaks to 131 degrees. But when they come out of the bag, they're just butt ugly. And so what a lot of people will do, they'll throw them in a cast iron pan. I put them on top of a charcoal chimney, and this is what we did. And we must have done 100 of them that night. And I'll tell you, I went through a lot of beer. It was one hot night. But that's one of the cool ways to finish it, is on a grill, or in this case, charcoal chimneys or a smoker. You can, because the exterior is not Maillarded. It's not seared properly. So
Yeah.
that's one of the extra steps. And that's why we call it sous vide Q, because it's a combination of sous vide and barbecue or grilling.
Mhm. Yep, exactly.
So hit us with your questions, gang. There's you can do brisket, you can do ribs, you can do beef ribs,
Duck.
corned beef, duck, pastrami. What are some of your favorite things to do, sous vide Q?
I'm a home cook. I'm not classically culinary trained, so I love the duck confit in the sous vide, because when you have a dinner party, people will think like that you went to cooking school. And it's so ridiculously easy. It's just a couple ingredients, and it's literally 22 hours. I mean, it sounds like a long time, and it is, but you're doing nothing. You're just going about your life. Like, you drop it, you go to sleep, you go to work, you take care of the kids, you do whatever, and then 22 hours later, you either put it on a grill, or I actually broil it with a little bit of sesame oil for some extra punch. And seriously, like, serving it with warm, like, room temperature green salad, or honestly, it's just so easy. It is one of my favorite things to do, because as the collagen breaks down over time, that's what's really turning it into the confit. The duck does all the work for you.
Well, you had me at the duck. Um, I absolutely adore duck, and if you're going to do a whole duck, you almost always overcook the breast. And duck breast is, I think, best in the 135 to 140 range, a little past what I like a steak, pinkish rather than rosy. And the skin needs to be crispy. And when you take it out of that bag, it's going to be rubbery and flabby, because there's a lot of fat on and under the skin. Ducks
Mhm.
ducks hang out in icy cold water, so they have this thick layer of fat under the skin. Do you pierce the skin before you sous vide?
I don't, and I don't salt for 24 hours. I feel like the sous vide takes care of all of that for me. What I will do at the end is put a couple drops, and I'm very sparingly about this, of sesame oil because it has a high smoke point, and it'll not only impart flavor, but it can handle the flame, and it gives it that. I mean, duck loves fennel and sesame and mustard, as far as I'm concerned, and those are my go-to: mustard, fennel, sesame. Sometimes herb de Provence if I'm feeling a really fancy, mustard, and salt, and that's it. I mean, it just doesn't have to be overly complicated because duck really is the star of the show.
Well, I'm a big fan of salting in advance. And I salt just about everything in advance. I call it dry brining. And I
Hmm.
think I'm the person who coined the term dry brining. I don't believe it has ever appeared anywhere prior to my first use of it. But the idea is instead of dunking food in a big old vat of salty water, you just sprinkle salt on it. And what
Hmm.
happens is that the salt gets wet and it dissolves and it migrates deep into the meat. And
Hmm.
it takes time for it to do that, but it actually moves faster the warmer the environment. So when you're in a sous vide bath, in that bag, the salt will actually travel deep into the center. So I really like the salt in advance.
I
Um,
know a lot of people do, and I guess I should caveat that by saying sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, because a lot of times I'll meal prep my duck. So I'll get a shipment in from D'Artagnan or something, and I'll do like 10 quarters at once, and I'll do my 5 dry brine seasonings, which is mustard, oregano, fennel, herb de Provence, salt. And then I'll put it in the bag and I'll stick it in my freezer. I mean, I haven't even sous vide it yet. Just because, like, oh, I'm in the mood for duck and I don't feel like, going to all that prep. I grab it from my freezer. It's already prepped. I drop it for 22 hours. And then that's it. So I guess I would say sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Depends on the preparation.
well, we have a really good question from Kristen Otto. She says, "Sold. How big is sous vide? Is a sous vide, and how much do they cost?" So let me see if I can do another screen share here and
Hi,
send.
Kristen. Thank you for joining.
Oh, you know her.
I
Okay.
know. I actually have to say that I have to thank Kristen for my hair. So
Ah! Your hair looks very nice tonight.
thank you.
Um,
Thank you,
okay.
Kristen.
This is what they look like. So if that's an iPhone, you can see they're about twice as big as an iPhone.
Hmm.
The one on the left is called Joule, Joule, and you control it entirely with an iPhone with a smartphone.
Right.
The one on the right is by a competitor called Anova,
Yep.
and it can be controlled from a smartphone, or it has a monitor along the top there,
Yep.
so you can
That's the
manually
one I
control
have.
it. The two of them are the leaders in the business, and they're not terribly expensive. I haven't checked lately on Amazon, um, but I think they're both in or around the $200 range. They're very precise. They're very reliable. They've been at it for a long time. They're very well regarded. I have noticed that a bunch of others have gotten into the game. I think GE is in it now, and some of them are down under $100. Now, I
Yep.
don't know how well built they are. I don't know how accurate they are. I don't know how precise they are. But you can go shopping. I'm sure that Williams Sonoma and the others all. Can you see these, by the way, Chef
Yeah,
Steph?
we can see them.
Okay. Um, so I'm sure that there are uh, uh, less expensive options out there should you be interested. Now the other thing
Yeah.
is you need something to put them into, and I just have a big old stock pot. But you can buy special tubs that are large, that have racks so you can separate the
Hmm.
bags and stuff. I mean, it's like anything else. You can buy gadgets, um,
Right.
but I just use like about a 4 quart or 4 gallon stock pot, and
Hmm.
these they're called immersion circulators. Those devices I just showed you, or sous
Yep.
vide machines, they're
Hmm.
capable of heating 10 gallons of water. So I've
Oh,
done
they are.
I did an event down in the Bahamas a few years ago, and we did like 50 steaks with one jewel.
Yeah, no, I think Kristen's asking. She says she's confused. She thought it was a
Can you see
big
the
unit.
question?
Yeah, I see the question. Kristen, it used to be huge, right? It used to go like
Yes.
the fancy restaurants, they like were the size of a desk, like they were crazy. And now they've made them to the point where literally you can throw them in a drawer or you can put them right on your countertop. And like Meathead said, you can throw it in a stock pot. I actually have one of the really big Tupperwares because I like doing multiple racks of ribs. I like doing like 6 leg quarters at a time, but I also have smaller ones. Last night, I actually sous vide jasmine rice. So everyone thinks sous vide is just for meat, but if you want the most perfect rice in the world, try 1 cup of rice with a cup of liquid, throw in some lemon zest and cilantro, and within an hour, you have perfect rice. So something for everyone.
Okay, we've got some questions here. I'm going to scroll back to the top and get caught up because we have some good questions. Darren wants to know if I'm cheating on him by inviting you. The answer is yes,
He's thinking
Darren.
of you, I promise, Darren.
Richard Jensen's asking if he can cook chicken cordon bleu and then smoked. I'm not quite clear on the question, but you've done chicken cordon bleu in sous vide, I know.
I do it every week. It's obviously every week. It's my spin on it. It's not breaded. It's a chicken breast that I sous vide, and then once it's finished, I have what I call my chicken cordon bleu glue. It's a mixture of mascarpone, Dijon, herbe de Provence, a little bit of honey. And then I do a layer of that. I do some ham and some Swiss cheese, and then I pop it under the broiler, which I think that's why Richard's asking that, because I think he saw my
under
demo.
The broiler.
I know. Sometimes I gotta cheat.
Well,
but I think that's why Richard.
There too. I bet that'd be good finished on the griddle.
It would be. I think I did something similar to that on the griddle with that deconstructed club that I did on your website.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And Richard reminds me of that event that I was talking about 105 years. It was in Wilmington, Delaware. Thank you, Richard. I'm getting old and my memory fails me. Darren's saying that beef ribs, medium rare, are his favorite. Now, this is really something interesting. Your classic barbecue meats, like beef ribs, brisket, you cook them for a long time. Let's say we're going to do a brisket classic, Southern barbecue brisket. We're talking 12 hours maybe at 225, 250 in the smoker. And they come out just wubba wubba, they call it. They're jiggly like Jello, and they're fantastic. But they're cooked all the way up to 203 degrees. Now, 130 to 135 is medium rare. 155 is well done. You don't want to eat a steak at 155. Why the hell are we cooking brisket or beef ribs to 203? It's because they're such hardworking muscles. There's so much connective tissue that you need to melt it. You need to gelatinize these connective tissues, and they will. They turn to Jello. And the way you do it is by taking it way the heck up to 203 or so, 205, 190, way up in the stratosphere. Now, one of the cool things is with sous vide, you can put it in the bag and do it at 135, 140, 145. I think I heard you say 150 is your low end. I'm 145, but you can put it in at that temperature, which is way below 203, but you leave it there for 48 hours or so. And what happens is, remember, we're always told things like, cook your chicken to 165. Well, yeah, right. And you can talk about how you're going to do sous vide at chicken breast, but That's for safety, because you kill all bacteria at that temperature. But what people
Including the
really need to
taste.
get a hold of is there's this time and temperature relationship. You can kill all the bacteria at 140, but it doesn't happen instantly. At 165, it happens instantly. But at 140, it can take 3 hours to get them all killed. So if you're going to do beef ribs like Darren's talking about it, say 145, 150, we're not so worried about killing bacteria as we are breaking down these tough connective tissues. And it takes a long time. So you can actually do beef ribs or brisket instead of 203 at 145, 150 if you just leave it in the sous vide bag for hours, days.
Yeah. The one thing I would, the pro tip I would say on that is if you are going to smoke it afterwards, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people have this 203 stuck in their head and they think, okay, you know where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, well, because that's my fault. I think I'm the first one that wrote 203.
I'm going to smoke it at 203. Please don't do that. So the only thing I'm going to tell you here is the sous vide's already done the work. You've already cooked it. Even if you didn't smoke it, it would be ready to eat. So really all you're trying to do is impart smoke and sear, but you want to do it under the temperature that you sous vide at. So if you sous vide at 150 for 24 hours, remember it's cooked, the work is done. Just finish it to I usually go 140. I go 10 degrees usually under what I sous vide it because I'm really just trying to warm through. Do you agree with that, Meathead?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, we like to eat food, whether it's sous vide or any other method, at 140 plus. When it's under 140, we tend to send it back. It's not cooked. Or it is cooked, but we feel like it's too cold in the mouth. So we want food 140 to 150 just in our mouth. That's where we feel accustomed to. So yes, absolutely right. It's already been cooked. It's done. It's safe. And what a lot of people will do is they'll do a brisket, and that's a big hunk of meat. Mm-hmm. So they'll do a whole brisket, maybe break it down in a couple of parts, and then throw it in the fridge. And then when the next day they'll take one out, throw it in the smoker, bring it up to 140 or so, because it's already been cooked at 150. It's already, all you're doing is warming it. It's reheating it. It's like leftovers for that matter.
Right.
And you bring it out, and now you still have a couple of more hunks in the fridge, ready to go for the next meal, and you can freeze it.
Yes.
So we have Cat Steel is asking, what sous vide machine should one start out with? I've been using Joule for years, and I love it. It has one drawback. Because it's operated entirely via phone. When we were in the Bahamas, I took a group of we have a pitmaster club on AmazingRibs.com. It's a 16,000 members, and we took a bunch of them down to the Bahamas, and we had a great old time down there. And we were sous videing steaks for dinner, but for lunch, we went off to a distant beach, and we cooked pizzas on the beach. And I had my phone with me, and I was controlling the Joule remotely with the phone. But guess what? I lost Wi-Fi connectivity, and the Wi-Fi went down. And now I've got 50 USDA prime steaks in a sous vide bath, and I can't control them. You never saw anybody jump on a golf cart so fast.
Yeah, I bet.
So the Innova has controls right on the machine.
That's one I have.
So I'm a Joule guy. You're an Innova guy. I love the Joule. It actually heats faster than the Innova. It has several other features that I think are better, but I really wish it had manual controls on the machine. But they're both really good. And if somebody's out there, I'm too busy trying to drive this machine here, but maybe take a quick peek over on Amazon and tell us what the two devices are selling for, because I'm kind of curious. They change.
Yeah, and
Karen,
they have super sales too. And I will also say Anova has 3 different ones in their line. They have a really they have one that's under $100. You can stick it in your kitchen drawer. And then there's another level up and then another level up. I've done all 3, and quite honestly, the most expensive one isn't that much more. It's a little bit more, but I think I've tried them all, and honestly, it hasn't failed me in years.
hmm
I love it. I love it. And they
Karen,
have super sales too.
Karen Gross is asking. She loves the shirt. Where can we get one? I presume she's talking to you. Although, Karen, how about this? Can you see my shirt?
We can. I think she might have been talking to me only because that's my mom. So, hey, mom.
Is it, no fair.
Oh, it's funny. Thanks for the silent plug there. Yeah. So my
And
website,
I'll bet you can buy it on your website.
yeah, I can cookthat.com.
Um,
All sorts of fun things on my website.
CBBQ is asking dry brining. Can I just shake on my salt and pepper the night before, do my dry brine, or do I just apply the salt the night before and apply the pepper before cooking? Now, this is a really good question. Salt is magical, and I know those of you who've been here before have heard me say this like every month I go through this, but real quickly, salt is magical. I call it the magic rock. It's 2 atoms, sodium and chloride, NaCl, sodium chloride, and when they get wet, they get electrically charged, and they kind of split up, and it's called ionization, and they go deep into the meat. Pepper is a massive molecule. It's like 20, 30 atoms. I don't know. Sugar is 23 or 24, depends on which sugar. They're all of these guys are just too big. They can't penetrate. None of them penetrate. None of the spices and herbs on your rack, no marinade that you own, can penetrate into the meat. The meat is fully saturated with water. It has no international highways that run through them. The only thing that can really go into meat deep is salt. And if you don't believe me, go out and buy a turkey breast or a pork loin roast, it's 3 or 4 inches thick, and get every spice and herb that you can find, sprinkle it on it, submerge it in whatever liquids you want, Dr. Pepper, fruit juices, whatever the heck you want, cook it up, and then slice it open. And in the center, it will not be anything but pork. You won't see or taste anything except the salt. None of it can go more than maybe a 16th of an inch. It's just a fact of life. Marinades, herbs and spices cannot penetrate. And we've proven this, and we have articles on our website and in my book that explains it. So the salt is the magic one that goes in. So get the salt, but now it takes time. The salt is slow moving, but it does move faster with higher temperatures. So in the sous vide bath, it actually moves faster. And how long to do it? I have this in my book, but in general, if you've got something like a steak, it just needs an hour or so for the salt to get going. If you have something like a pork loin roast, which is 3 or 4 inches thick, it can take 5, 6 hours or longer. A turkey breast overnight, but it doesn't hurt. You can do it long in advance. The pepper, the spice rub, you got one of my my fan. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah. See, you get to sell your shirts. I get to sell my rubs.
There you go.
This stuff, only the salt will go in. The rest all sits on the surface. Okay, so Richard is saying Anova just releases 3.0 of their precision cooker and nano. Okay.
Yeah, and another thing that we should talk about at some point is you want to clean your circulator just like you would clean, anything else that you have laying around your kitchen. So you don't have to clean it every time. every couple months, and it's as simple as just running it for a half hour in some water and some vinegar. But it will maintain the life of your circulator. And these things, I mean, they are built so well. They if you take care of them, they will last you a good long time.
Okay. Kristen was saying, I'm surprised. I thought they were big things. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
This is
There you
my
go.
Jewel. And it's got a nice clamp here. It can clamp onto a beer cooler. And this is it. And I drive it with my smartphone. Now, I have to put this into a tub. And I just use a stock pot. But you can buy special big tubs just for the purpose. But the sous vide machine, this is called an immersion circulator. And it's got the heating element, and it also has a fan that moves the water around because you want to move the water around.
Right.
And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Kristen, you got good questions. Do you think you can heat up 10-gallon thing of water with sous vide to 165 water temp? I'm only asking for dressing turkey. Yes, you can take it up to 165, but you don't have to. Remember, I was saying, and I have a chart. I'll see if I can pull it up. But in fact, while I'm going to go look for that chart. Will you explain why you don't have to cook chicken and turkey to 165 with sous vide?
Well, I'll tell you why I think you don't have to. Personally, I do my chicken breast at 140. I think Meathead, you do yours at 150. Because when you finish, well, first of all, you're killing off all the bad stuff. Anything, for meat, anything over like 131, you're killing off.
Well, you got to explain that. I mean, I touched on it, but you got to explain why it's safe at less than 165.
Well, you're finishing it past that though anyway. So like once you take it out, you're still finishing it, but the harmful bacteria, it's a time and temperature game. So once you're past 130, 140, depending on what you're cooking, you're killing off all the bad stuff that's lurking around. I don't know if you want to add to that, but
yeah, the minimum temp seems to be around the 131 range. So if you're up over 131, say 133, 135, bacteria are not growing and they're dying. And the question is how long does it take to kill them all? And I'm going to try and find a chart that gives you an idea about that. But you can do a turkey or a chicken at 140, 145, 150. And the result is it's going to be a lot juicier and a lot more enjoyable at a lower temp. Now, a caveat here. I find that chicken under 155 is kind of stringy. So for me, if I'm going to sous vide chicken, I'll do it at 155. Which is still.
Are you talking about a whole chicken, or are you talking about chicken breast? What are you talking about?
All chicken parts. I find the texture odd. Personally, I just find the texture odd when it's below 155. But I know people who like it at 145.
I mean, I do my chicken breast at 140.
Wow.
And yeah, I do. I do it at 140, but by the time so we'll take the chicken cordon bleu as an example. I do a 140 for a couple hours, and by the time that's under the broiler and that cheese is melted, check out the video. I mean, you can see I cut it right open right there. It is moist, it is tender, and it is cooked. But yeah, I know like everybody says 150, but I don't know. I've tested this for years, and this seems to be my sweet spot. But if anybody is concerned, start at 150. But I ask you to check the video so you can see the step-by-step process.
Can you see questions?
Yes.
Good. Take it for a second. I'm digging. I'm looking
Okay.
for.
Well, I'm actually, Kristen has a question that I need to throw your way. So you let me know when you're ready.
Okay,
But
well,
Fred,
I'm just going to do okay. I'm going to do another screen share here. Just stick with me a
okay.
second. Um, okay, this is my setup. Can everybody see that? That's just a big pot with my
Yep.
jewel in it, and I bought a silicon lid. They use them for frying pans and pot, and I cut it so that I mean, instead of getting fancy, I just got a pot with a silicone lid. That's all there is
Hmm.
to it. Now, I'm going to scroll down. Hey, we got a couple other charts here. Let me just blow it up. Come on. There we go. By the way, you guys don't know, don't tell anyone, but you're looking at content from my new book. Okay, so traditional grilling. If the grill is at 400 degrees, that's the top line, and boiling is 212. When you're cooking and grilling or in an oven, you have this little moment where it's at the perfect temperature, 135, but it keeps on going up, and then it can't go beyond 212. Meat can't cook past 212. You can't get meat to 250, 300 because it's 70% water, and water boils at 212. Now, if you're cooking sous vide, Steph, I can't see what's on the screen. Can you tell me if you're seeing these charts?
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so this is if you're cooking sous vide. You set it for 135, it goes to 135, and it hits that, and it sticks. It
Yep.
can't go any higher. Okay? Now, we're going to look for the chart on safety. Stand by. There goes my new book. All right. Here's a chart. This shows, okay, the orange line is chicken. And the left column is how many minutes. And then the bottom is the temperature. And the blue line is beef. Now, so if I want to cook a chicken to 140, it takes about 35 minutes in sous vide. And then it's safe. It's pasteurized. If I want to cook it to 145, it's safe at 14 minutes. And so on. So you can see that we have this time and temperature relationship with beef. If I want it at 135, it takes about 25 minutes to reach 135. You follow? Okay, so we have a time and temp, and then this is actually a table that USDA supplies. Chicken and turkey, 12% fat. If you want to cook it to, say, 145, 14 minutes. Okay? So if you're doing it for an hour or two, you've got safe.
Yeah, no, I do it for 90 minutes on the 140. And the other thing that I do is, like, if I want my meat, if I'm doing a steak and I want it like 134, it's like served on the plate, definitely on the lower end. I know your book says 131, so like don't cook it. For me, I don't cook it at 134. I cook it at 131, and then so that way when I sear it very quickly, I can get it to that 134, because it doesn't take any time at all for a beautiful 131 degree steak to get to an ugly, for me, 145 degree steak. So
and this is, I think, the most difficult part of sous vide. And it dovetails into what Richard Jensen is saying. Richard has just posted a link to douglasbaldwin.com. That's douglasbaldwin.com. Doug was one of the pioneers of sous vide. And his book has all these tables and charts. And that's, it's kind of easy to understand. If I want to grill a steak to medium rare, I cook it to 130 to 135. It's easy to remember. But there's all these, if I want my ribs really tender, what temperature do I sous vide them at? If I want them to have a little chew, what temperature do I sous vide them at? And for how long? You've got two things to remember, time and temperature. So it's complicated in that regard. if you're going to get serious, you need to get Baldwin's book or his website. There are a couple of really good books out there. The International Sous Vide Association, the guys who run that have a couple of really good books. Jensen's posting all kinds of good links here.
Yeah,
to
you got to
Breville.
be careful though, like when you're doing, especially these long cooks, because I know people to be like, oh, I sous vide 72 hour. I'm like, what are you doing in that sous vide? I mean, like once you get into the 2 to 3 day mark, for me, it can be a little bit overkill. It can start to take on that like pot roasty taste. So just kind of play around, and if the first cook isn't perfect, well, that's okay. I mean, we've all been there. I mean, it's kind of like a steak you put on a grill, right? Like they're not always perfect, but play around with it, see what works for you, for your taste. But I say, with those long cooks, start in the 20 to 24 hour range, depending. 48 to 72 hours can be a little overkill, especially if you're in the 160s.
A couple of things here. I am able to see all questions coming in from Facebook and YouTube. I'm not able to see questions coming in from Twitter. So if you have questions and you're watching on Twitter, you might try to come back. Facebook.com/AmazingRibs or YouTube.com/AmazingRibs and ask your questions so I can see them. Either that, Chef Stef, if you said you were looking at Twitter, if you're seeing some questions over there, maybe we can field them through Twitter.
I don't know if I'm seeing over there, but for anyone that's following me on Twitter, you can always at me, put a question on there, and I will monitor on my other screen, and I'll also monitor the slide.
Yeah, I should do that too. Kristen again has a good question. She harvests turkeys, and she's asking about 165 temp for defeathering. Okay, well, I was responding to 165 because that is the USDA recommended temperature for safe cooking turkey, which you can ignore if you're sous videing. You can go at a lower temperature. For defeathering, I think that's a whole nother situation. We're talking about a cooking method when we're talking about sous vide. For defeathering, you're trying to get the skin to change its texture and behavior so that it makes it easy to pull the feathers out. And I don't think sous vide is the way. I mean, sous vide is a cooking technique, not a defeathering technique. And
Okay.
Fred Hickson's asking, what about sous vide vegetables? Vegetables are different. Vegetables are made out of cellulose and lignin and other very, very tough components. Now, I've sous vided carrots, and they get really tender, and I've sous vided them and thrown them on the grill, and they're wonderful. But they take longer and often a higher temperature. What's your experience with vegetables, Chef Stef?
I don't do a lot of them, but when I do them, I'm usually piggybacking off of a different cook. So, as an example, last night I did jasmine rice in the sous vide, and that's at a super high temperature. I mean, be careful. It's 195 for 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how al dente you like your rice. And then once I was done with that cook, I knew I wanted to put some onions into the rice. So as that temperature came down, it was like, went from 195 to 180. I just dropped in around 170, 180. I dropped in a bag of diced onions. I set my timer for 20 minutes and I pulled it out and they were cooked perfectly. But I don't really do like a lot of like just vegetables. I'm usually piggybacking off another cook.
We have, Cody Lee has some very nice things to say. He says, I taught him how to barbecue. That's very kind of you, Cody. Jim Tortorelli. Jim, I think I've seen you before because I think we touched base. I'm married to a Tortorello.
I remember that from last time.
Yeah, a little turtle dove. That's what they are. He says chicken plucking at 145 for about 40 seconds. So if you can pluck a chicken at 145 for 40 seconds, I don't know if turkeys are any different. But Kristen, I'm a little confused by your question. How hot the water would get if it got to 165 or 185? Well, if it's 165 or 185, that's how hot it is. I mean,
And I
if
will
it,
tell you, 195 looks like that. That is a sous vide burn. You never want that to happen.
oh, you put your hand in yeah.
No, I didn't. I actually, it was a freak accident. I had a safety glove on. I actually had, and it was a freak. A little bit of water got trapped me in the glove, and all hell broke loose that night.
Ouch, ouch.
Yeah, yeah. So be careful. 195 is 195.
We have some pretty experienced sous vide folks in the audience. Richard's got some good comments. Richard Jensen and also Darren. I think you're still here. I did some work on Clubhouse for a while, and I kind of gave it up because there was just nobody there. But I loved the fact that people could actually ask a question. You can bring them up and join the conversation. It's kind of frustrating. I'd love to have Richard and Darren come in and join us in this conversation, but there may be a way to do that sometime in the future. I think I've gone through most of the questions. We're coming up on 1 hour into the conversation. Any other question? And we don't have to stick to sous vide. If you want to ask barbecue or frying or whatever else is on your mind. Both of us love to cook. I mean, I cook everything anyway. You give me food and I'll find a way to cook it.
Yeah, I know how to cook regular too. Let's see. There's a
I
question.
think that's a fun question, though. Regular. Is sous vide a fad? Is sous vide with us for the long run? Is sous vide going to penetrate the masses? Is sous vide going to be just something that geeks like us are into? And what is the future of sous vide? What do you think, Chef?
I think sous vide is here to stay because it's kind of like digital marketing or the internet. Like, remember when everyone used to go to the mall and now you just shop online? Like, they are making the sous vide more and more approachable for the home cook. They're making it smaller. They're making it smarter. It works with our phones. I personally think it's here for the long haul. I don't think it's kind of like, dare I bring up the taboo word instant pot, but it's kind of like the instant pot where everybody thinks you just throw anything in there. And I've always been subscribed to the thought process that you only put food in there that has a high fat content. If you put a chicken breast in a pressure cooker, anyway, so I think that's different, right? I think that sous vide works with so many different things, but I've also experimented with some things that, you know what? I like going old school. I think steak and sous vide is great, but honestly, if it comes to a burger, I'm throwing it on the grill. So I think it's really knowing what the sous vide is good at, just like anything else that you have in your kitchen.
So what is it bad at?
I mean, this is probably unpopular opinion, but burgers, like I don't like a sous vide burger, honestly. Like, it's okay, but first of all, it's way more time and trouble than it's worth. Like, I got to put it in the bag and then I got to set the thing and then I got to dry it. And I can get it on and off the grill, like at my perfect temperature. I can do a smash burger on the griddle. I mean, there's just like so many quicker, more fun things to do with a burger than shoving in a bag with some water. That's
I gotta share something I'm fiddling with now. I'm not 100% sure about this, but there's this little bar and grill near us. It's a dive bar. And every time I drive by, I can smell the burgers, and they just smell fantastic. So I went in there one day, and I ordered the burger, and it was fantastic. It was about 5 ounces, a little over a quarter pound. And it was just fantastic. So I pulled up a chair at the bar right in front of the grill to watch what she was doing. And it was a gas grill, not a griddle, a gas grill. And she was throwing them on there, and she was doing the one thing that everybody tells you not to do. She was smashing it with her spatula. And they all tell you don't do this because it squeezes the juices out. And so you're going to get a
Yeah, but it
drier burger.
caramelizes it.
Well, what was going on is I finally cornered her and drilled her. She gets her burgers at a 70-30 blend instead of the normal 80-20. That means your normal burger meat is 80% lean, 20% fat, or 85% lean, 15% fat. Rarely do you see a 70-30 blend. That's a lot of fat. Now, that's the ratio that a lot of sausages are made out of, but not burgers. But that's what she was getting. And by squeezing it, that fat was dripping down onto the burners or the metal plates above the burners. And when that happens, they vaporize. And some of those flavors go back up onto and into the meat. And that was creating that really outstanding flavor. And I've been playing with that. I think that she's onto something. I think the old rule about don't smash your burger with the spatula on a grill may be a myth. Now, now I did some the other night that were 80-20, and they tasted. I did side by side. I had two burgers, one I smashed, one I didn't. And the one I didn't smash was definitely juicier and more tender. But the one I did smash had better flavor. So going up to 70-30.
Yeah, when you smash, you're getting those lacy edges that just caramelize beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you get like a whole it's not, I don't even know if it's a burger, but it's like you get just this lacy, beautiful, I don't know, it's like a meat Parmesan crisp. That's all the only way that I can describe it. But Meathead, we have something on Twitter over here from Troy Smith Barbecue. Troy says he's enjoying the talk. When you sous vide a steak, do you prefer to put it on the grill before or after the bath, or both? Do you want to take that?
Well, you and I have had this conversation, and I don't know if we agree. I'll give you my opinion. Some people like to sear it first. Some people like to season it with rub. Then it goes in the bag. It's cooked to 130 to 135, and then they take it out and they sear it. And I showed you how I like to sear it over really high flame. Or you can do it in a cast iron pan. I don't agree with that. What happens is there's one thing we haven't touched upon, is that when you're done sous viding, there's a lot of liquid in the bag. It's shocking how much liquid is in the bag. You would think, especially since it's so tender and juicy, that it would hold in all those juices, but it doesn't. You lose quite a bit. When that happens, it washes a lot of the smoke flavor off and a lot of the seasoning from the rub off, and it's in that bag, and it's discarded. I have never had any luck trying to make a sauce out of it. I prefer to salt it well in advance because the salt penetrates, sous vide it. Then when I come out, I either smoke it. Well, at first I season it. I throw the rub on it. Then I'll either smoke it or sear it. So I do that at the end. And I've done this experiment where I've done them side by side. Smoked before, smoked after, seared before, seared after, seared before and after, rub before, rub before, and rub after. I've done this whole series. And my approach is salt before, sous vide, and then either sear or smoke or both, and rub. All that stuff comes after you come out of the bag. Now, Chef Stef and I've had this debate, and I think you disagree.
I mean, I definitely agree that is one way to skin a cat. For me, I've done a lot of experimenting as well, and so I'll throw the dry brining into the mix. So what I will do is I have a couple rubs that are my go-to, and if you guys are following me, you know exactly what they are. And I love them, and they pack a lot of flavor. I mean, these aren't like just your normal like foo-foo rubs. Like these these pack some pretty powerful flavors, and I will dry brine for, even if it's just for an hour or two or whatever I have time for. Sometimes it's overnight. And I will really let that soak in. And Meathead is right. Some of it does wash away for sure. But I have done this. I've done this with and without, and I really can taste a difference with the dry brining approach, putting in the bag, and then just drying it. Because you can see, like, especially with some of these rubs that are darker, like you can see a lot of it has washed off. But if you hold it up next to a piece of sous vide steak that didn't have some of these rubs, you definitely can see the color difference. So for me, I like to dry brine when time permits, sous vide, and then sear it hot and fast. So
I agree. There is a difference, but I don't think it's a significant difference. And I think if you
right.
put that rub on afterwards, it erases any differences. Kristen is here with an interesting question. Can you sous vide bone in chicken legs and thighs and then fry them?
Yes.
Well, all right. So once you've sous vided, remember it's in a moist environment. So the chicken skin, just like the duck skin she was talking about, it's going to be soft. It's not going to be crispy. It's going to be flabby. Or a steak, it's going to be pale. It doesn't. So you need to finish whatever comes out of the bag. You're not done cooking when you take it out of the bag. You need to either sear it. Now, frying is a finishing technique. It's a very high temperature technique. The problem with it is if you want to get good crispy skin, you need to start with fairly dry skin. If I'm doing now, and by the way, and this is a whole nother topic we could do a whole evening on. I do my deep frying on my gas grill. You deep fry in the house. You're going to set off all the smoke alarms. You're going to spatter all over the stovetop and the countertop. It's just a bloody damn mess. But if you take it out to your gas grill and you put a Dutch oven on the direct heat side, put the burners underneath, get it up to 375 in that oil, just an inch or two of oil, get the oil up to 375 and leave the other side off. You can fry on the grill, and who cares if it smokes, if it spatters. And when the chicken is done, you take it off and you put it on the indirect side and you close the lid. You put more chicken in the oil, and you can keep doing these in batches. It stays warm on the indirect side, it drips, and it's fine. And it's not dangerous. You're not going to knock over a 2-gallon cast iron Dutch oven. And even if you did, what's going to happen? You're going to lose a $500 grill. You knock over a cast iron Dutch oven in your kitchen, and you're going to lose a house. So it's much safer than cooking it indoors. But back to your question. Once you've sous vided it, you've got wet skin. You can pat it dry, but it's not really going to be totally dry. And in order to get that skin crispy, it's going to have to be in that oil for a while. So essentially, you're cooking it twice. You're cooking it once in the sous vide bath, and then you're cooking it in the deep fryer. So I think that if you're going to want fried chicken, you probably can just skip the sous vide and go straight to the fryer. What do you think?
So I'm gonna add just a thought onto that. So what you could do if you had time and you weren't trying to get the meal out that night is you could sous vide it, you could dry it, and then you could put it on a rack with a little bit of whatever seasoning you want. I know he's going to say salt and baking powder, because that will dehydrate the skin and it will allow it to crisp and get drier quicker. And then you could go ahead and fry it, and you'd almost have like this 2-prong approach. And I think it would be what was that? I missed it.
I said I think that's brilliant. I think that's a great solution. Yeah, that will help dry the skin out, get the salt in there, and absolutely, I think, yeah. So you do it in 2 days. Yeah. Day 1, you sous vide. Day 2, you fry. I love it.
Yeah, and you probably can explain the baking powder pH balance better than I can, but I will tell you guys, it works. I do it with my wings every time.
Mm-hmm. Cody is talking about using meat tenderizer on steaks. Yeah, meat tenderizer is an enzyme, and it makes the meat more tender. It really works. It doesn't add or subtract much in the way of flavor. And I recommend it, especially if you have cheap steaks. Absolutely. Sean McManamy. Sorry if I stumble here on your pronunciation. I have a Weber gas grill and a master-built electric smoker. I want to get a pellet grill for smoking, but my wife thinks I do not need one. Help me make the case. Uh-huh.
Oh,
Uh-huh. Well, here's the case. Pellet smokers are brain dead simple. They're really easy. I don't want to go too far into this and get in any trouble here, but we're coming up on March and it's National Women's History Month.
oh
And
Lord.
it's a good time to mention the fact that we've just added Chef Stef to our team, and we've also just added Tamar Haspel. Tamar is a food science columnist for the Washington Post, and her columns are brilliant. She understands an awful lot about food science and politics, what the FDA is up to and why they're making their decisions and who's influencing them and so on. And Tamar's columns will appear in only two places going forward, the Washington Post and AmazingRibs.com. And we have three of her columns getting ready to come out any day now. And I'm really honored and proud that we have her. With all those disclaimers in front of me, I have tried to hypothesize why men gravitate to the grill more than women. Now, we have this Pitmaster Club. 80% of our membership are male. Why is that?
Fire.
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 But why aren't women drawing? I think some of it has to do with the fact that there's no thermostat control on the grill. Women do get taught how to cook, and not all of them, but many of them learn from mom and grandma, or they take classes. Men don't. Men don't know how to. Now, these are very broad. Please, I don't want any blowback. I actually had some of this conversation on Greg Rempe's show, and I had two women in the audience come after me with knives. I think that pellet smokers, because they have thermostat control, set it and forget it, just like your indoor oven.
Just like your sous vide.
Just like a sous vide. I think that's going to appeal more to women who have learned how to cook on an indoor oven. And I think that if you're trying to make the case to the lady of the house, you might make the case that it's just as simple as the indoor oven, only it has this added flavor. And the flavor of smoke is a spice. It's like an herb or a spice, only it's not on your spice rack. So, yeah, you've got a couple of good grills. Now, you can smoke on that master-built electric smoker, but it's not the best tasting smoke. Electric smokers don't make the best tasting smoke. And you have a Weber gas grill. You need a charcoal grill, dude. But a pellet smoker is really easy. And if you buy one, you'll teach her how to use it, and she'll really love you for that.
Okay. But I will say, to add on to that, as easy as they are, there are also some really good tips for fake out. So Meathead, I will use yours. I've already said this once tonight about putting it on wet. So I learned that from you years ago. I wrote an actual blog on it, and if you want to get the smoke flavor, you better put a ring on it. So, and that's doing it wet, and that works great on a pellet grill. Like, so there are things that you can do along the way to really kick these flavors up another notch. And yes, women understand this.
I hear a parody song in the future. If you want to put a ring on it.
It's exactly what I did.
I mean, I hear a Beyonce parody song in the
Exactly.
future. I mean, I have written "Stand by Your Grill," and we opened this show with "You Can't Hurry Ribs." Now we need to have "If You Want It, Put a Ring on."
Let me see. I have it up on my website right now. I'm looking at why you have to smoke meat cold if you want to put a ring on it is the name of my article. So yes, and it was inspired from Beyonce.
Cold, wet surfaces do hold smoke better. CBBQ is asking, curious about the idea of holding a brisket for 12 plus hours at a temperature from 140 to 160. I've heard that various barbecue places do this as normal. Are there benefits? Smoking first, then holding. Yeah, there's an aspect of that question that you've missed though. If I'm a barbecue restaurant, I'm constantly faced with this problem of if I'm going to cook brisket, even ribs, I have to start the process hours before the lunch rush. And I don't know how many people will come in a rush. I mean, if you come into a burger joint and you order a burger, I go to the fridge, I pull out raw meat, I throw it on the grill, and a few minutes later I serve it. But if you want ribs, I had to put it on. If you're there at noon, I had to put those ribs on at 7 in the morning. And if you come in with 20 of your friends for a meeting lunch or just a busy day, I'm going to run out. And this happens. A lot of people get peeved. They go to barbecue restaurants and they've run out of ribs. They've run out of brisket. Takes 12 hours sometimes. What these places are doing is they have special humidity controlled ovens. CVAP is a brand that's really good at this. It's an oven. You can cook in it, but basically they use them as a holding oven. And they're like 90 to 95% humidity. So you can throw in a bunch of briskets in the morning or the night before in most cases. And when they're ready, put them in a CVAP. And they'll stay there for hours and hours and hours and won't dry out because the humidity is controlled. So that may be what's going on in these places. You can take a brisket off of a regular old-fashioned backyard smoker and throw it into a beer cooler, wrap it in foil, throw it into a beer cooler, and leave it there. And we call this holding, and that's different than resting. Resting is what you might want to do with a steak or a chicken, something you're cooking at a low temperature, under 160 degrees or so. But holding is what you do with a brisket or pork butt at 203 degrees. And there's a difference. And you can hold a brisket or a pork butt for hours in a beer cooler, but you don't want to hold it to where it drops below 150 or so. Now that it's continuing to cook from carryover, it stays moist, juices even out. You lose a little bit of the bark, but you can do that. But I think what you're talking about here, if you're talking about commercial restaurant, they probably have a CVAP or another machine that is holding it for hours and hours and hours at a humidity control.
Yeah, and I'll say that's another little cheat for sous vide ribs. A lot of times I will do sous vide ribs. I do mine 150, I think it's 155 for 22 hours. And then depending on when I've dropped them, if I'm not ready, because obviously it's the next day, if I'm not ready, I will wrap them and hold them in a 150-degree oven just so that they don't continue to overcook. So for sous vide ribs, especially if you live in a cold part of the country, I can't really use that excuse because I'm in California. We can always grill here, but sous vide ribs, if it's snowing outside and you have a hankering for ribs, you would not believe that these did not come off a smoker.
Yeah, in fact, if anybody out there knows about Chef Stef's, which is one of the great culinary websites, and it's now owned by Breville, who owns Jewel. The guys at Chef Stef, before Breville bought them, I went out there and we had some fun. We tried to replicate the flavor of outdoor cooked ribs cooked indoors in a competition, their team versus my team. And it was a lot of fun. And you can actually come pretty close. And I've got an article on AmazingRibs.com about how that went. But we won.
Congrats.
There's a really good comment from Cody Lee here about this question about women cooking outdoor. He says, of course, women have been cooking over fire far longer than men historically, and absolutely right. I mean, we don't know for sure, but likely going back to prehistoric times, the guys were the hunters and the women stayed at the cave and tended the fire and the children and cooked, and they were likely the first pitmasters.
And speaking of fire, girls like fire.
We've been talking about finishing, and I talked about my. Bring that forward again. I showed you how I did it on the charcoal chimneys. Look at this. If you want to take a steak out of the sous vide bag and get a sear on it, look at that thing. Oh my God.
Pretty cool. I actually won this. I don't know if you remember that.
You won it in a contest, a cooking contest.
I did. I
think the judge was Arnold. Yeah, you need a sous vide gun.
Yeah, these things are so much fun. I will tell you. If you don't have one, and you're like, another great thing for people in cold climates, you can sous vide, and don't do it on your counter. Of course, you want to make sure that you have a baking stone or something that can handle, because this shoots out flame. This isn't like your little gas grill. This shoots out like some serious flame, but it is a ton of fun at parties, let me tell you.
Well, we're coming up on another 10 or 12 minutes on the 90-minute mark. And usually I try to wrap these things up within the 90 minutes so I can get a good night's sleep. And I am staring down the barrel of a deadline. I have to turn in half my new book on Wednesday next week. So I am sweating bullets right now, and I need a good night's sleep. So we're going to wrap up in 13 minutes or so, or at 9 o'clock sharp. So if you've got questions, let us have it.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Philip is asking, Philip Kohler, can you set up a grill for tacos al pastor? Well, I think we're talking about, all right, here's the core concept, and I might have glossed over it quickly. You got a gas grill. Hopefully it's got more than one burner. You turn one burner on high and leave the other burner off. You take a 2-gallon cast iron Dutch oven and you put it over the hot side and you pour oil in it. Now for chicken, I only put an inch and a half or so in there because I want some of the chicken above the oil so steam will come out. If you deep fat fry it and cover it with oil, it tends to loosen the breading and a lot of it flakes off. So you want a little bit of it flipping above the surface, and then you'll turn them. But I also want the chicken in contact with the bottom where it's hot metal. So I've got hot metal conduction underneath. I have hot oil surrounding it, which is convection. And then I have hot air above it. So I have all three cooking techniques going on. But in any case, 375 oil, 1.5 inches or so deep. In goes the chicken. Now for al pastor, you're cooking it in a lot of oil. And generally it's simmering. It's not deep frying. So you're going to turn the temperature down. You don't want 375. You probably want it, I don't know, this is like a confit, if you will. So I think you probably get that oil temperature down under boiling temp, down around 180, 190. Do it right on the and then you don't have to deal with the mess of the oil. But I think the real reason to do it outdoors is when you're deep frying, is because deep frying tends to smoke up the joint and it spatters everywhere. I'm
Yep.
going to do a quick screen share again. If I can get this up here, stand by. There we go. Again, I don't know how well you can see this, but this is a device that I use for like hers. It's a less expensive unit. It goes on top of, if you just have a soldering attachment for a propane tank. This attaches to it. I can't remember the brand name, but that's one technique for quick searing.
The gun's
What
a
I'm
little more
doing here
fun.
is I'm flipping through pictures, looking for relevant photographs. Well, here's an interesting. All right, okay. Let me pull up another screen share. Stand by. Screen share. I don't know how well you can see this. There we go. Oh, that's better. Is that visible for you, Chef?
Yeah, that's visible.
These are 2 ribeyes. The one is done with reverse sear, and the other is done with sous vide. The one on the left is the sous vide. So it was in the bag. I took it out and I threw it over a hot grill to sear it. The one on the right, I started at a low temperature on the grill away from the flame, indirect, and it went for about an hour. And then I moved it over the direct flame at the same time, and I seared them both. And you can see the color is different because the one on the right absorbed more smoke. And the taste was also interesting. The one on the left, the sous vide one, was definitely more tender and more juicy. But the one on the right had more flavor. So they're both the same kind of concept. Reverse sear, in case you're not familiar, is you start the meat at a low temperature on the grill or in your oven, and you warm it gently, and then near the end, you bring it over direct hot infrared radiation or flame, and you sear it. So it's the same concept as sous vide. You start it at a low temperature in a bag, and then when you're done, you take it out and you put it over infrared or hot flame or into a cast iron pan and sear it that way. So it's a trade-off. The sous vide was more tender and more juicy. The reverse sear was a little more flavorful.
So it's a good poll. What would you rather have?
Yeah.
Flavor? You know?
Taste is a matter of taste, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. We all eat with our eyes, so.
Richard.
There was
Richard, you've been tremendous. Richard remembered the brand of my little searing gizmo. It's called Searzall. It's a Searzall. And it's on Amazon. It's relatively cheap. Probably a lot cheaper than your Arnold Schwarzenegger's ray gun there.
So someone had asked, Katz asked, how do you add smoke flavor to the ribs that are sous vide? Is it just using liquid smoke? So for me, yes, I do like adding smoke, liquid smoke to the bag. That's my preference. And the way I do that is I'll put a couple drops in the bottom and then I'll massage the bag so it kind of gets everywhere. So it's not just sitting in the bottom. And then on the flip side of that is once you're done, you can directly put them on the smoker to impart even more smoke. So it's really, up to you. But I know a lot of people are, anti-liquid smoke, but I'm actually a fan of it in a pinch.
I know people that are anti-liquid smoke too. And I say to them, then put down your bourbon and your scotch. Because they make liquid smoke almost exactly the same way they make bourbon and scotch. It's just they burn wood, the smoke goes up, it hits cold metal, it condenses, it's collected, and it's put into a bottle. And that's the way they make bourbon and scotch. I don't know what the issue people have with it is, but I'm showing another technique here for smoking. There's a product on the market called Grill Grate. Can you guys see this picture?
Yeah, we can see it.
Grill Grate is a cast aluminum. It's a grate that you put on top of your grill. But these grates are connected in the middle by solid metal. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so you can see there's solid metal, and then there's holes in it. But I throw pellets in between, and then you put the meat on top. And now you have the meat sitting right above smoke, like a quarter of an inch above the smoke. And so you can sear in a hurry and get smoke in there in a hurry. So it's very close proximity smoking. It's a really nice technique. But you need these special grill grates to do it.
And is it because it's creating steam for the smoke, or how?
There's no moisture involved. It's just wooden pellets, but the wooden pellets are just immediately below the meat.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when does that book come out?
My deadline for the first half is Wednesday. Second half is middle of March. Photography is end of May, and it'll be out next spring, probably April or May.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
And
Wonderful.
it's a really good project. There's enough content for 2 books, and so I'm lobbying the publisher for a 2-book set. Whether she's going to go along with that or not, I don't know. But it's I'm 73 years old. It's going to be 74 fairly soon, and it's probably the last book I'm going to do. And it's my manifesto, my swan song. So I'm hoping.
Well, I have the last one sitting right on my bookshelf. It's got your autograph in it, so I cherish that.
Good book. If you folks don't have a copy, it is the second best-selling barbecue book in history, I believe. The number 1 best-selling is Barbecue Bible by Stephen Reichland. And my book is called Meathead. Get a copy right here. Da-da-da-da. And
That's it.
And it has sold over 250,000 copies. Most cookbooks are lucky to do 10 to 20,000, so it's done really well.
It's awesome.
Well, it's 8:58, and I think we've had a great audience with a lot of really good questions and a lot of fun talking with you, Chef. And you can look forward to seeing more of her articles focusing on sous vide, some of her interesting, very creative stuff she's doing, recipes on AmazingRibs.com, both sous vide and griddle cooking, 2 areas of her expertise. And we'll have tomorrow's material showing up any day. Why do I want to say tomorrow? I'm sorry. But a lot of cool stuff happening down at AmazingRibs.com. We're trying to improve every day. If you've never taken the 30-day free trial in our Pitmaster Club, I encourage you to do so. We don't ask for a credit card or anything like that. Just come in, take the 30-day free trial. There's some free ebooks, some magazines, a lot of cool stuff, a lot of recipes, a real community. We are rigorous about keeping the conversation on food. There is no politics, race, religion, or flame wars in the Pitmaster Club. 0. The minute it pops up, we take it offline, and if you do it more than once, you're out of here. So it's a really fun, friendly culinary community. Well, I thank you, Chef Stef, for finding time to joining us, and I
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is really special for us, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. And we will be back next month the same time, same station. It's almost always the last Thursday of the month. So I don't know if we have a topic yet. We'll find something seasonal and interesting and bring your questions, and we'll see you then.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.